All right, Winning Plays podcast is back and NBA free agency is here. My name is Brian Robb, joined by Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston for this edition of the Winning Plays podcast. Chris, this is pretty dangerous territory here for us. Recording a preview podcast with roughly 30 hours to go before the start of NBA free agency, but damn it, like we're not gonna. No trades are going to blow this up, or are they? What's our prediction here?
We are. Do you have like Twitter up and visible just in case? Because I feel like
yes, we can react in real time.
I think we did this last year, and we said, do we give it like an hour before something happens, or I feel bad if my podcast producer is watching this, going, "How come we haven't done a podcast this week?" No, that's because I'm certain that as soon as this gets over,
because Chris is smarter than me. That is why. You guys are waiting till after something actually happens here. But there has been movement around the league in the last week. I mean, we could really just throw around some Kevin Durant trades for the next few days, like you guys did at
I've already done that
Boston last year. Yeah, you already been there, done that. But we can actually talk. I do think that's worth talking about a little bit later, just for the not actually like the trade part of it, but like if there will be any underlying impact left over there.
Ooh.
Or perhaps potentially hurt feelings, if you will, after the fact. But for now, I think item number. I'll throw it to you this way. What do you expect to happen first here? Do you expect trades to be made, or do you expect signings to be done? Either it doesn't have to be of a major variety, but who do you got in the you got the trade or signing in the horse race here?
For the Celtics or for the NBA?
For the Celtics.
So I would say more likely the trade comes before the signing, because I think if we use last year as a guide, that it's more likely that they're diligent and sort of wait out and see what the market dictates. The one thing, and I mean, again, maybe if there's a player out there that you didn't expect to be available at the mid-level, and like, okay, you call Kyle Anderson, you say, hey, we're offering you $6.3 million. You want to come? To me, it's probably a quick no. But you know, if it's not, and you're in that market and he says, yeah, I will, if we can get it done today, then yeah, splurge and use your mid-level. More likely than not, you're going to be going for a probably second or third cut of player. And unfortunately, so much of it will be dictated by who's left available. And so we saw it last year with Dennis Schroeder. The Celtics swooped in. Now that didn't work out. That's not a great example for Celtics fans to be bolstering the bench, but it is sort of the more feasible thing to me. And I think you just start with that trade exception expires July 18th. And every day that passes, it gets a little bit dicier because teams can pin you against the wall. So I think it's more likely the trade comes first before the free agency. Am I crazy?
Not at all. I agree with you 100%. I think it's a situation and where, like you're getting not what's left over in free agency, but you're not going to be able to outbid anyone in free agency. So unless someone's like, okay, I would love to play in Boston for $6 million, I just don't think that that's going to come out of the gate immediately. And you might not have to wait as long as you did last summer for someone to kind of see what's out there and say like, oh, you know what, the Celtics are the best fit for what they're offering here. But there's no question you factor in that, and obviously the sense of urgency with the TPE that is waiting with the big one, at least with Evan, the $17 million one. I think certainly once things get rolling with other teams there, your opportunities with that situation probably become more clear as well in the next, honestly, even maybe before July 1st, maybe as soon as, Thursday night.
Follow-up question. Are we sure the Celtics even use the mid-level?
This is where I was going. Listen, look at this. This man, just writes the pod without even knowing what's going on here. So Brad Stevens made these comments last week. After draft night, when I posed pretty much a question being like, okay, what's how does this kind of figure into your calculus? And he's like, you know what, like, and I'll say this: him taking that position publicly makes a lot of sense, because you don't want to be strong-armed or bullied by a team you're negotiating with down to the buzzer in a couple of weeks, potentially, if they haven't used it before then, to say like, okay, you guys got to give us that extra second round pick or Peyton Pritchard or Aaron Nesmith or whatever, or else we're not going to do this deal. And the Celtics do have other ways to add, and via free agency or these other smaller trade exceptions, so they could say, okay, you know what, we're good. Like, take it or leave our offer here. But Chris, I'll say this: the public posturing is fine. Behind closed doors, unacceptable. Have to use that
for sure.
Like, right? I mean, is this just negotiation, public talking, negotiation 101 here that we're looking at?
Yeah, 100%. And the way I keep phrasing it is they've spent 4 second-round picks now to just keep this thing sort of going from the Hayward exception
keep the pulse alive.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly could vaporize, or they could just use a smaller chunk of it, but you can't just walk away with nothing. And I know it's nothing to obsess about, whatever the 51st, 56th pick, whatever it would have been, but you can't just these are assets, and especially when your payroll is bloated, you need to use every available option. Now, I will say, as much as you thought I was on the same line, I was saying I don't know if they're going to use the mid level. I think that especially if they use the traded player exception, now you're super committed salary wise, especially if they use the majority of it. And so my thinking is, unless they move Theis, then I wonder if they're less likely, because I think the bill gets big in a hurry, and all of a sudden Celtics ownership has been willing to spend, but not quite to the Steve Ballmer, Golden State limits. And so it would actually be nice if Steve Ballmer would trade us one of his $14 million players, or something less than that, or let Hartenstein come. I mean, there's no possibilities, endless possibilities but they're just, at this point, they're just like being hoarders with their talent out there. And so that's quite a luxury to have. I don't think the Celtics have quite the same luxury. And in a way, I don't want them to have that luxury, because we've seen when rosters are overcrowded with talent and there's not playing time for anybody. So I'd rather they take one good swing of the bat and maybe keep that mid-level exception in their pocket than to just splurge because you feel like, oh crap, our bench wasn't good in the finals, we need to make some overreactions right now.
Yeah, I wrote the other day that I wrote about just the comparison, like you brought up with the Clippers there, in terms of how deep they are, and like bringing back the 2018-19 Celtics vibes for that. And that the roster the Clippers have right now makes that Celtics 2018-19 team look like shallow, based on like you have like Terrence Mann as like your 11th man. And just the wings are, so you would certainly think that there could be some chip to fall there, but maybe it's, hey, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George do not have good injury track records, so we're going to hold on to this depth for now, and then if we want to pawn someone off during the season, we can do that too. So there's no guarantees there, and they're certainly not going to like give those guys away outright, like, for, especially if it's someone like who's solid, like a Luke Kennard or Norman Powell. But that's certainly a team to keep an eye on this week. But yeah, the mid-level thing you bring up is interesting though, from a standpoint of, you're right, like if they take a big swing with this TPE, then things can get a little costly in a hurry. Are you of the mind of, would you want to give up assets to get off of Theis and then take that swing with it mid-level and kind of push more of your chips all in for the now? Or is that listen, like, we can probably address these other needs with littler amounts in free agency and maybe other trades, and keep that in our back pocket, or for in-season flexibility?
It probably comes down to cost. So if you are very bullish on what you're acquiring with the TPE, and there's always a chance, right, you're going to have to give up more assets with that. So you're limited in what you can give out. But if you're telling me you can sign a third string center, like a 7-foot bruiser, I keep using the Aaron Baines comparison, and that's probably, he's probably a higher level than what you'd be able to get with the Dwayne Dedmans and Robin Lopez's of the world. But if you could fill that with a minimum or a slice of the mid-level, then maybe I'm okay with splurging a bit to get off Theis, and because it's just, at that point it's just redundant, and you got what you needed. You had the backup, the depth this past season. I just don't know how much of a role he's going to play. And again, that depends. That means with the TPE they're probably getting a 4, and now you have some versatility behind Al. You got Robb, whoever you bring in as third string center. Grant's in that mix. I just don't see where Theis is getting big minutes on a 7.5 man rotation. So I guess it all depends on how it all trickles down. But I can certainly see avenues where spending to get off Theis, to keep the luxury tax bill low, is advantageous, as long as it's not a prohibitive amount of assets going on.
Yeah, like I wouldn't. What would you?
I'm not giving up a first to get off.
Exactly.
Theis.
You give up 2 seconds to get off Theis, something like that. Right. I feel like that is reasonable, and maybe you get something back maybe like you're trading him player for player there, so you're getting back someone who's maybe also overpaid, but also could be useful.
Or give cash. You can send out $6 million in cash at the start of every league year. So maybe you're paying off half his salary and then taking back $4 million in bad cash, and all of a sudden you're that. Now again, every million you save on your books is really more like $2.5 million or whatever the crazy number is. So I think that's just the balance that they're going to have to strike.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Knicks last night with this Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks, 2 second-round picks, and apparently they threw in $6 million in that deal. So it's like, that's the Pistons taking the role of the Celtics in like whatever it was, 2014, 2015, where they're like, we got cap room, and you want to throw us some cash and some extra picks.
So you reported it. Are you surprised the Celtics weren't more interested in Alec Burks?
No, yeah. So from what I heard, they had a chance to it was offered, and honestly, this isn't I imagine Alec Burks was probably offered to half the league.
Sure.
So but the Celtics were in a unique position where they could take that contract in now, and I don't. From my understanding is that they don't not like Burks. It's more of can we do better than Burks?
Right.
And we don't want to close doors now for Burks coming off an injury. Who is he going to be playing a lot in the postseason? If he's having a good year, but honestly, probably not. So that's and the Knicks obviously were in a situation where we want to get the greatest player on the planet, Jalen Brunson, signed by July 1st. And so we
really
wild. What happened to Jalen Brunson here? What's going on?
Isn't this the best case scenario for the Celtics? The Knicks' continued ineptitude will ensure that there's not another player in the East mix. They might be okay, the 6th seed in a good Eastern Conference. But yeah, good luck putting all that pressure on poor Jalen Brunson to be your superstar, $100+ million. Him and Randall, man, what a wild situation for the Knicks to sort of bank on. But there are guys that Tibbs loves, and evidently, that's his plan.
I like Jalen Brunson. I just don't like giving up a lot of other assets to go sign a bigger contract than he probably deserves. But like you said, Celtics, one last thing for them to worry about in terms of
unbelievable
Eastern. The Knicks offseason think about the Knicks offseason last year for a second though too.
Oh my!
How much of a disaster is that at this point?
Thank goodness for the Lakers, or else there would be so much more pressure on the Knicks. But I do enjoy every time turning on ESPN and seeing Spike Lee was just randomly sitting in a car lamenting the status of the Knicks to Stephen A. Smith, and I'm like, this is amazing. They were so despondent they needed to call each other from vehicles and film a Zoom segment. So that is the Knicks fans in a nutshell right now. I want to flip it on you because obviously people have been asking me all week since we started with TPE. Do you have a wish list? What's your because one, I'm truly interested, and two, those are the persons that will be immediately jinxed by this, and they will be traded somewhere before night's end. So let me put some pressure on you.
Yeah. So we'll start with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and then we'll go to Alec Burks. Yeah. No. So in terms of there's pie in the sky guys the OG Anunobis of the world, which I think are just off the table because even those guys those teams are not going to take. The Spurs might obviously take, if they deal Murray somewhere and are looking for just a boatload of first round picks, but they can probably get better first round picks than what the Celtics are supposed to offer here. So for me, I'm intrigued by a couple guys. Herder, who I think we may have talked about a couple weeks ago. I just think that's the type of guy, him, a Kennard, or even an Norm Powell. I think guys that are proven shooters that can run that can be the lead scorer in a second team offense, but also be a great 4th or 5th scoring option in crunch time. Yep. I think it's ideal for what the Celtics should be wanting to put together here, because I think they were clearly short of that guy in big spots this postseason at times.
And I'm with you. Herder has been at the top of my list probably since we started this exercise, in part because I think the Hawks are the sort of team that should desire to get off money. And some of that will depend on what happens with John Collins. And again, maybe that's why you're just in wait and see mode until dominoes start falling across the league. But there's a guy who's got size, who can obviously shoot the ball, who isn't quite the defensive liability that the Duncan Robinsons and even the Kennards of the world probably are. So and I'm not saying he's like a good defender. I'm just saying he's a little bit more towards average than those other guys. And so I think I'm okay with that and pursuing him. I get the Kennard stuff. And again, it's invariable that we'll look at the Clippers and say they got to move somebody. So it's just who they want to get rid of. And I can't see it being Powell after, just finally getting him.
I'd be surprised there too.
So the big exercise I keep doing is as I look around from there, and there'll be surprise names that come available, and some teams will go in a different direction, and maybe that opens up avenues, or maybe some team publicly, makes it known that they want to cut salary, and so the cost is less prohibitive. I have a hard time finding that player and finding the player that's better than what you've got. And now that's looking at the Celtics bench and saying they're playing to their potential or playing better, certainly than they did in the finals. But I don't know, I see a lot of people suggest point guards and shooting guards, and I'm like, you already got a little bit of redundancy there. Wouldn't you rather just let Peyton Pritchard figure out what you got? And, you go look at turnover rate. Who had one of the lowest turnover rates in the league was Peyton Pritchard. Derek White should be better after a year in this system. Grant Williams should improve. Aaron Nesmith may or may not go to Summer League, and I have no idea what's going to happen with that. But at least Grant Williams is a little case study in you can improve after a disastrous year 2 and come back in year 3. So maybe Nesmith pans out more than I'm giving him credit for right now.
Yeah, and that's always something to think about in the back part. But you're at a team point now. If you're Brad Stevens in the front office, you can't count on that. If that happens, great, but you have to have an acceptable alternative for that, because you just look at the finals, Chris. You're like, okay, this team playing a bunch of talented wings, the Warriors, the Celtics didn't have a wing they could play off their bench. And it worked for a bunch of matchups earlier in the postseason because, the Bucks didn't have a bunch of good wings, and the Heat, couldn't score or whatever. Mm-hmm. Against the Warriors team, that ended up really coming back to bite, because you had either undersized guys that were taken advantage of in switches, or you had Grant Williams who couldn't stop fouling everyone when he was on the court. So I
convinced myself yesterday that I would take 10 minutes of Wes Matthews defense.
Right.
And, so that tells you a little bit of something. And again, I think that's the balance the team has to strike. One of their glaring needs beyond the Al Horford succession plan, which I think should be number one. And certainly, you always want as much shooting as possible, and ball security is good. But somewhere in the middle there is just, like you said, they had nobody they could consistently lean on to go give 5 to 10 minutes of quality wing defense. And part of me says, could Nesmith do that with enough time? I'm not bullish on it going into the year, but if they'd actually invest in him, maybe it could. And if you're not willing to invest in him, then just go get somebody who will take, even if it's a slice of the MLE, and be that guy. And while I don't expect Wes Matthews to be coming in here and firing bows and arrows all the time, I do wonder if he can give you 10 good minutes of defense a night. And that's probably more valuable to me than necessarily the guy who shoots 38% from the corner but can't defend a lick.
Yeah, and so do you feel like, though, from the guys who are Wes Matthews types, the guys, it's almost like maybe they need to hit free agency first to figure out, okay, what can we fill? What need can we fill during free agency? Okay, and then we figure out how to use the trade exception rather than vice. I mean, obviously, if you have a good enough bite in the trade exception where you're like, okay, this is obviously the guy that can help us no matter what. We're gonna just get him in here now. But I think a lot of it's you kind of have to be informed in terms of both sides of the equation there, and that may help you better utilize your options rather than being proactive and doing something that helps on paper, but then limits what you have to do and what other needs you need to fill.
I wonder if we'll know if the Celtics aren't linked, and unfortunately, NBA reporting is shoddy at best, so we won't know if they're truly
rock solid. I don't know what you're talking about.
But if they're linked to a whole bunch of players at the start of free agency, but they just don't have the revenue to lure them away from teams with the big tax with the non-taxpayer mid-level, then maybe we know they're hunting that first and kind of keeping options open for the TPE and what they need to target. But I think it feels like it's got to be more vice versa. It feels like it's got to be TPE first and then fill the cracks with the mid-level where you don't have to use it all. You could use a smaller slice. It's probably easier to fill cracks that route. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see. I'm bracing myself for a very quiet start for the Celtics, but Brad Stevens is a known do your work early type of guy.
Yes.
And so I sneaky wonder if they've got somebody or somebody's in mind that they're looking to pounce on, that maybe they have an inkling they have a shot at.
It's gonna be like 3 trades in a row, like rapid. It's gonna be boom. Like it's okay. This we're gonna trade a bench piece. We're gonna do a TPE, and then we're gonna clear out some salary. I feel like it's gonna be, to your point, in terms of like getting stuff done. I feel like there'll be an order of operations here when things start happening. That kind of gets all their ducks in a row from that.
As long as they're not making moves in mid-July so that we can have some sort of friggin' break from basketball, I'm all for it.
I mean, Summer League is the drop dead deadline. But it is though, but it's great. July 18th, this is like a dream for us. It's like, okay, they have to do this or else it goes away. And here's my other question for you now. With this team, say all these teams with decent guys for the TP, whether it's the Hawks or the Clippers, or we can go down. We'll do a rapid fire fun random names that fit in the TPE at the end here. Say those guys, it's like giving up a first for these guys, or just like more than a first. Like the ass is just too much for it to make sense when you factor in the salary restraints. What do you do with the TPE in that situation, knowing that like you obviously want to use it as an asset? Do you take a bad deal and get a pick with it? Do you just try to get an expiring just to have the expired to keep as a placeholder? Like, what is the actual best usage of that to keep the pulse of the TP, the Gordon Hayward TPE alive here for another year?
Gordon Hayward's going to be out of the league, and we're going to be talking about the TPE that's he spawned from. It's
he's
truly
traded
remarkable.
Back into it. And can Evan Fournier be traded back into the TPE? That's a
my God! Talk about mind numbing. So yeah, that's a great question. I would think you would at the very least want. I don't think you use the full thing. Just have a dumpable contract, because you get a $5 million guy that can be packaged with Theis and an asset. You know, if you didn't have to give up much of anything else, like maybe that makes sense. But you know, who's looking to dump $5 million of like and get someone serviceable? So I certainly hope that it doesn't just vaporize, but they will have to get creative. I wonder if they'd start looking at third team and any number of deals out there, just trying to play facilitator and get something out of it, whether it's draft picks or just like you said, taking on a contract that's an expiring. You just don't want to tie your hands with salary when you're starting to worry about the number and the luxury tax and all that. So yeah, but if the prices are just too prohibitive, which like, my general sense has been based on the moves we've seen so far. I mean, Derek White looks like it was pretty costly compared to what we've seen early in this offseason. And yet, you know, who knows? Free agency gets weird and teams start spending crazy stuff. So I need to see it start to play out before I have a better grasp on exactly what the Celtics need to do in panic mode.
All right, Forsberg, we've had a lot of the popular names, a lot of the dream pie in the sky names here. I'm going to get to some, like, I don't know if they're meh names, but names that are worth maybe a conversation.
All right.
And can conceivably be available here. So let's going to go through
try and go quick.
names. We're going to do it quick. Number one, Kyle Kuzma.
I'm surprisingly warm to it. But what is Washington doing after today's trade? Are they trying to put together like a sneaky okay team that could be something if Bradley Beal and KP and all them pan out? So I would suspect the price would be too high on the surface, unless they're plotting something else to help Bradley Beal not want to flee to Boston.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That's a situation where the Nuggets today and the Wizards had a 4-player trade. Monty Morris and Will Barton going to the Wizards, KCP and Ish Smith going back to the Nuggets. Like you said, I think that's a move that makes the Wizards better, because I like Morris a lot, and Barton and Caldwell Pope. I mean, Caldwell Pope's probably better, but not by much. Certainly not enough to give it more. So Denver's trying to dump some money there. The Wizards are saying, okay, we're trying to get better around Beal. So if Kuzma, I don't know, like maybe if they're just trying to like, you probably have to involve like a Grant Williams or something like that in there maybe to like make that work. And that's kind of I'm not sure what that does for you there, because Kyle Kuzma's not $10 million better than Grant Williams. So
exactly.
but I agree with you. I think that's something to look at, but my guess is the price is probably too high from the Celtics perspective. This guy, I don't think you're gonna have to give up much for. But I don't know. But I don't know what the reaction is if they just settle for a guy like this. Kelly Oubre, $1.6 million expiring deal with Charlotte.
Interesting. So what is Charlotte's plan?
I don't know. They brought back their old coach, so maybe they're going to start. And then they're realizing this Gordon Hayward contract might have been a mistake. I don't know.
Re-signing Kemba to go with Steve Clifford and letting him be a bench spot. I don't know. Yeah.
Where's Big Al?
I'm all for it. I'm intrigued if it was a possibility, especially if it wasn't a costly one. Celtics would have the best eyes in the league with Oubre and Al Horford. So I don't know. Yeah, I would say on the surface, it's one that I'm surprised it hasn't come up more. Someone finally asked me that the other day, and it kind of threw me for a loop. But yeah, it sort of fits the profile, right, of a well-rounded guy that could give you some wing minutes and such. So I'm not against it. I just don't know I need to know what Charlotte's doing before I can entertain it. I'll throw this one too. I was doing the Celtics Red podcast yesterday, and Wayne Spooney, one of my favorite. He's got a good mind for this stuff. Very Danger Cart like in how he looks at things. He threw out PJ Washington as sort of the Al Horford succession plan, and he's still on his rookie contract. There's no reason for Charlotte to trade him other than it's Charlotte, and I have no clue what they're doing, and they just drafted a big man, and so. I do think that's a team you call and maybe try to gauge, but I don't know if you're going to have any answers.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea in theory. They should definitely be making calls like that where you can get any player under team control, and maybe empty out some first round picks for them.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it's A, you got to be right about that guy if you're going to do empty out the pick cupboard, and B, what's Charlotte's plan? What's their incentive to do that unless they decide they don't want to pay this guy his next contract. So that's an interesting one. That's a interesting one by Wayne there. All right, couple more here. This guy has been brought up forever at the trade deadline, never ever moves. Perpetually brought up at the trade deadline. I'll see if you can guess him. He plays in Florida for a bad team.
Terrence Ross?
Terrence Ross, nailed it. 11.5.
I just feel like he's going to go back to Orlando. It makes the most sense. Again, does Orlando have any need for Terrence Ross at this point? I would say I would not give up anything beyond salary cap relief for Terrence Ross, even though he still have 2 years left.
Just 1 year left. Last one. This is the last one.
Okay. Oh, wow. We've been talking about Terrence Ross so long that it feels like when it started, he had maybe 5 years. I think he signed a max bench contract or something because it felt like he always had a billion years left. I'd think about it. Is he? I mean, he. It's so funny. I go back to it. So my first question I keep asking myself: is he better than what you've got? Is he better than Aaron Nesmith? Yes, right now. Should Aaron Nesmith be Terrence Ross at some point? Maybe.
That'd be ideal.
I don't know. I'm a yes if it costs nothing, besides taking on his money.
Yes, and so it is you look at guys like this on teams like Orlando, and you're like, as they come to the end of the deal, and it's what is the purpose of them being kept here? How are these teams operating? Why would you not try to? It's if he's not dealt this offseason, I feel like Orlando's the rationale there makes absolutely no sense. But
didn't his numbers dip last year too?
Yeah, he wasn't very good last year. I'll pull him up here, but he certainly, he suddenly is. He's definitely gotten to a point. Yeah, I mean, he shot 29% from three. I didn't realize it was that bad. Wolf. So yeah, that's certainly a him and Oubre to me are deals where it's you take that on July 17th if there's nothing else out there. That's end of the barrel type of better than not using the trade exception. At least you have a contract to move down the line. Certainly not giving up anything of value for them. And even for Ross, that might just be something where it's what else are you gonna take to take on that contract?
Yeah. And I like the idea of an expiring, just like you said, even if you take it on, you don't have a secondary move. It's off the books next year. Not that you need space, but at least you're not encumbered multiple years into the future.
Correct. All right. Last one here. We'll just do. Should I just call this the former Celtics round? You can pick your favorite pick your favorite former Celtic to take back into the TPE. Would it be Evan Fournier, Jay Crowder, Kelly Olynyk? I'll keep going down this list here, but yeah, we'll start with those three. I'm sure there's like three other former Celtics on here that could conceivably. Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris could do it.
All
right. He fits. Yeah. So who's your pick? And who's your pick out of those four?
Probably Jay Crowder, but I don't see the reason Phoenix moves him. Like they're still in the mix, and I feel like I don't see that. I mean, I want to convince myself on Kelly Olynyk. I have not been able to. So and everybody else. I mean, I don't know if you saw I threw it in there jokingly, and it's not a TPE guy. It's a mid-level guy. But do you call Real Madrid about Gershon and getting him out of that deal?
He's winning them to titles, correct?
winning Olympic medals, and I'm telling you, if I wish he had been as motivated as he is now when he was here, because I really think he could help this team. And it's not happening because he literally just came off the Celtics books. He literally just signed a 3-year deal with Real Madrid. And if you can't even get Jan Madar to come over, I'm not sure you're going to get Dancing Bear to leave whatever great money he's making overseas. But if you have a stretch 4 out there that can maybe an Alfred second plan, please send a link info.
All right, let's wrap on a couple of things. One, I want to get your quick take on the Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant drama this week, which you had to talk about a lot at 12:30 a.m. after to burn an hour and a half of draft night on the air until that pick finally came through here. But to me, it's hilarious to me that this is a scenario that had to come up for like a week that would never ever have come up otherwise for probably anyone else outside of Kevin Durant, given the Kyrie drama. And now I don't know if it has any kind of lasting impact of Jaylen, because it's like it's clearly not coming from the Celtics, but like you wonder if anything like that factors into is this something you worry about all long term in terms of like, oh man, they just don't appreciate me here or whatever.
Sure. I mean, it's somewhat real to bring it full circle in this and bring up two players we've already talked about, the whole Jay Crowder, Gordon Hayward thing, right? Sure. You know, where Jay felt clearly disrespected when Celtics fans were cheering Gordon Hayward. And so it certainly factors in. Now, the difference is that at some point down the road, the Boston Celtics were able to say, here's a max contract, Jaylen Brown. You cool with staying? And it's like, yeah, I'm cool with staying. And so I don't think it'll have any big ramifications. Selfishly, I hope that, you know, in these instances that the players use it as motivation and find it the way to harness it in a good way. But certainly it's just been a weird week in terms of, like, I didn't understand it to begin with. And I kept trying to, and I get it, it's Durant. I kept trying to wrap my head around it, but just never seemed real. And I think people get so caught up in these fake trades when they're like Jaylen for Durant, and it's never going to work like that. Like, you know, the money doesn't work like that. It's $16 million off. So I just couldn't get too far down the road on it. And now it'll certainly be something he'll eventually be asked about. And we'll see what his reaction will tell us a little something about how it festers. I do think he should take it as a great compliment that he was potentially in a discussion for a player of Durant's status, but certainly you also use it as, oh, come on, when will Boston fans appreciate me? And I keep saying it like this, and tell me if I'm wrong. If Jaylen Brown had the postseason that Jason Tatum did, we'd spend weeks here kind of crushing him and saying like, oh, you know, Jaylen just isn't that guy. He's not a top 25 guy. And not that we give like Tatum a pass, but it's because he did show so much growth this year, and he's clearly such a superstar that we kind of shrug it off and say, yeah, ran out of gas at the finish line. But I don't think we spend enough time focusing on how much better Jaylen's gotten and sort of when he has those good moments. And so maybe that's just on us as reporters and people who scream about things on podcasts, TV shows, to just be a little bit better about appreciating it. But no, being in trade conversation with Kevin Durant is pretty good.
Right. It is. It's one of the things like, okay, like how offended are you gonna be by this? But also at the same time, it's like, yeah, I was pretty important in sweeping that guy, a couple months ago. So, and I'm 10 years younger, and yeah, I definitely see both sides of it. So that is, again, it's just funny to me that this doesn't even come, this randomly comes up because of Kyrie Irving.
We got nothing else to do.
Yeah, so we got nothing else, and so that fills the void for a few days, and will go away. But whether it'll leave a lasting mark or not, I guess we'll find out. But
I spent the first half of last week defending Marcus Smart against all of his haters.
You've been busy. You've been busy the last week.
I try not to come off as like a total green teamer, but oh my God, I had to defend the fourth this week. Do people realize they had the best starting five in the NBA last season? I digress. It is what it is. I get it. We have a lot of time to talk about these things. And, I kept telling our football guys who were very adamant that they might actually trade. I guess I shouldn't say that. Tom Curran, who is as critical of Jaylen Brown as possible, was on the side of, probably better to just ride it with this core. Sometimes I think that's the bigger message, right? Let's just appreciate what we have instead of worrying obsessively about how that we can get, incrementally better in various stages, and just appreciate that the Celtics are in a pretty good spot, and both with the finals run and just the roster going forward.
Yeah, I think that perspective, Chris, is what's really important here. And it is this team, they didn't win it all, but it's pretty close to a dream scenario last season from a standpoint of like the growth that those guys showed, and whether it was Smart, Brown, Tatum, and you have them all locked up here, and you have the ability to add without taking any big pieces away. So it's a situation where with Brad Stevens and the rest of this front office and Ime Udoka, they're probably not going to want to rock the boat too much here. Will they make a swing for a big upgrade if they can, if it takes away a bench piece or two? Absolutely. But a bigger shakeup beyond that, I think, is highly unlikely, given the value they place on continuity and what this group showed.
I'm with you. I just be better Celtics. Now I was just saying be better Celtics fans, but it's such a small portion of the mass that gets overworked up about this stuff. I think most have a good grasp on how fortunate we are to be watching what we are. So, stay normal, most normal Celtics fans.
All right. We are going to wrap this thing up before it all becomes totally out of date with the trades of half people we talked about. But
we didn't do a whole lot of mid-level. I just want one.
Mid-level. Okay.
Two names.
Two names for mid-level. Give me, I kind of think, he's been brought up already. I think you can make a pretty compelling case for Batum. If with the trades, the Clippers, who knows? Maybe he's in love with LA and they can pay him obviously a little bit more than you can, but you could at least get Ime Udoka in there on the front line to, I think, having him as a weapon here, but listen, you could play with, 11 other guys that are going to be fighting for minutes with you, and you might end up playing 5 minutes a game, or you can come here to the East and not have to go through the Warriors, and you can play off the bench a lot with two of the upcoming stars in the league. I don't think that works, but I think that's pie in the sky, perfect type defensive guy who can hit threes that you should be shooting for the stars for once free agency starts.
The only one and so I don't think it's feasible, and I think he has to kind of chase the money. So what if you had Ime call Kyle Anderson, who they do have a relationship from San Antonio?
Line two, Kyle Anderson, same situation.
It's right, and you say, hey, look, can't pay you a whole lot the next 2 years, but you're our Al Horford succession plan. You're going to play a ton of minutes because we don't want to play Al more than 20 minutes a game, and yet that'll be a lie, and he'll play 35. And you pitch on your role here is going to grow, and we're going to pay you further down the line, and you're going to be with a bunch of people who trust you, who developed you, and you get reunited with the Derek Whites of the world, and come make this a former Spurs party.
100%.
I still don't think it's enough.
He says go. But here's the good news on that front, though. In that line of thing, there really aren't a lot of teams that can pay those type of guys. Even Kyle Anderson, like if he's looking, he can get the full mid level somewhere, but the full mid level is not a ton more than the taxpayer mid level. And so he's coming off his second contract. He got like, he's still looking to get paid, but he's not like looking for that first big payday. So it might be a situation here where, you look at what like Otto Porter Jr. did with the Warriors last year. And you say, okay, come here for like, he literally came there for nothing. Like this is the Celtics are going to be paying a guy like Anderson a lot more than that, but you win and you rebuild value. So you jump back into the free agency, pool next year whether you want to get paid by us or other teams, like they can at least make that case to guys like
they'd have to do 2 years though, right? Because they need to get rights.
You're not gonna right. Like you're not gonna get them. You can maybe give them the player option for year 2 and say, okay, if you want to go get paid by someone else after year 1 that we can't give you, like by all means, like we're not gonna stop you from that, but like rebuild your value here.
What if and I think these are just I'm thinking out loud about whatever the next bad article I'll write is. Because I haven't crunched the numbers. How prohibitive crazy would it be if they gave them the full mid-level? Any chance they could stay under the apron?
For who? For
the Kyle. So if they gave
for Anderson. Oh, that's a good. Ooh, I want to say
like
if you probably give up your TPE, like being able to use that, I think if you do
that.
But
if you could get him, wouldn't you be?
Yeah, no, that's like you get him for something for more money. You move Theis in a separate deal to like clear out that space, and then you fill out the rest of your like you make the math. I haven't crunched that. That's a good article. If you want to write that article,
all right, I'm actually as soon as we hang up, because I haven't. Someone asked me yesterday. They said, "Give me something creative that gets the Celtics the player they need that we're not thinking of." And I said, I racked my brain. I said I kept trying to think of like jumping in on third teams and like all these different avenues. I still think it would be tight.
I think it's gonna be real. I'm looking at the numbers now. I think it'd be real tight with Al's contracts involved.
And right. So I might just be like, they just might be over the apron and no chance. Let's call Darren. We want to see about him third
speaker.
I'm sure he'll give us that information. But I'm just saying. So because like the other alternative would be have Memphis sign him and then like sign and trade, but then you're hard capped again. So maybe you could get him less than 10, but still not. Or I guess you wouldn't have to give him the full. I guess you could find the sweet spot without having to. Either way, you have to stay on the apron, and I don't have any means as of right now. I got to go crunch numbers, but yeah, you probably have to move Theis, which means giving up a pick. But is that a path of less resistance to get the guy that you're most high on?
So it should be. It should be explored. It will be tough to pull off and fit the rest of because you have to do roster holds and crap like that,
right?
Too, so that makes it like challenging, but it's certainly something they can explore if they, like you said, if a guy like an Anderson type that will sign for the right price, and the other TPE options aren't that appealing.
And the last thing I'd say is you're handcuffing yourself at midseason if someone gets hurt or if you need to like someone bigger becomes available, like it gets really hard to make those trades. So certainly some downside, but I just think this is how they have to think in terms of like what's next. And that's where I'm at with it. But now I'm starting to think about the numbers. I might be like
you might have to blow up too much. It's like I think you just have to blow. It's like gonna be more than Theis. You'd probably have to move out. So you're gonna move out like Grant or Neesmith. It's like I'd probably want more than Anderson in that scenario to like I think that's stuff they should explore. But like give me Anderson and then another guy coming in, and then that like can help you, and then that might at a lower cost, and then that fits. But that's the kind of stuff though that they have and will be throwing around. Because there are 1,000 different angles you can take this in terms of like, okay, do we use it now? Do we use it later? Like how can we get the free agent in the door? Like, do we want to use the mid-level for just a guy who could leave after 1 year? Or we want to prioritize the mid-level to getting a guy who's at least locked in now, so we don't have to address that again in free agency, which I feel like next year, which I feel like was a recurring issue with these like 2-year deals of a player option they gave out, in the like post 2018 years. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they kind of approach all that in the next couple weeks here. But that'll do it for us here. Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston. He will be breaking things down on Thursday night on the air as well as on the Celtics Talk Pod and writing and the 1,000 other things he does for them. Like the most versatile man in the business. We appreciate you hopping on, and rate, review, subscribe to the Winning Players Pod. We'll be back when things happen. Trade, free agent signing. We'll be back here later this week to break it all down.
Probably the next hour.
Yeah, right. So exactly. We're finishing this at Wednesday afternoon. So talk to you guys probably in 1 more hour from here. But in the meantime, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys later this week.